Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Robbie Basel Show. Last time we were here, was episode 100, and I talked about dawn of a new age. And that was the big opening that I had on Tuesday. And I talked about a lot of nonsense and how bad I was at predicting stuff. And we get to talk about that, not this video. That's not this video. That's next week. All soccer next week. But with the Stanley Cup Finals starting tomorrow, I felt like I needed a guy who knew hockey better than me. So I gave a phone call, a text to my boy, and he's here. Ladies and gentlemen, for the first time on this channel, Rocket League commentator for the Mac, one of the best ones I know, Cameron Woolley, everyone. Cameron, welcome to the show. We're happy to have you here.
Man. I'm flattered.
Listen, everyone does that when I do these intros. I have to hype them up somehow. But Cam, also a host of a WIUR show, he joined me for the NFL draft. We went through a long stream
Marathon.
A couple months ago. Yeah, it was
marathon.
You got to embrace the full thing. So,
dude, that was some of the most fun I've ever had recording anything. And part of the fun was how long we were sitting there and how boring the draft really got once we get into the pick 20 something range where nobody really cared about who was being taken, especially since the Giants and Jets were off the board, all the quarterbacks were gone. Anyways, I'm not here to talk about football. I don't know, Robbie might have something planned later about the NFL, although June 7th, I doubt anything is really happening in the NFL at the moment. We're here to talk about hockey, the Stanley Cup Finals, the Edmonton Oilers finally breaking through in the McDrysaddle era, going up against the Florida Panthers, who are in their second straight trip to the big dance. And both of these teams, I think they're very different. And I'm sorry if I totally stole your
you did it. Go right ahead. Go for it.
No, but Florida and Edmonton, I see two very different teams. They both have star power, but Edmonton, I think, is a bit more top-heavy. And you see that just when you look at the numbers, man. I'm going to pull up the stats right now. Just bear with me for a second. But everybody knows who's on the Edmonton Oilers. Everybody knows Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. Now Evan Bouchard, McDavid, Draisaitl, and Bouchard are top three in the league in the playoffs in scoring, and it's not particularly close either. The next closest non-Oiler is Vincent Trocheck of the New York Rangers, the only forward of theirs who actually showed up with 20 points, and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is tied with him for fourth with 20. So this Oiler team has a lot of talent. Obviously, Zach Hyman is a guy you can sprinkle in as well. The leading goal scorer in the playoffs with 14, although when you play on a line with the best player in the world, it's not that hard to score goals. Leon Draisaitl tied for second in goals. McDavid nowhere to be seen on the top 10 in goals, but assists, Connor McDavid in less than 26 playoff games has 26 assists, which, in case you don't really know, that's really hard to do in hockey. If that's done over the course of a full season, that's 95 assists. And that's something that hasn't been seen since, McDavid did it last year. So, and Evan Bouchard second in assists. This team really runs on their high-level guys to do high-level things. And of course, their depth has been a bit better this time around. Devils legend Adam Henrique is someone who comes to mind for me, at least. Him being on that third line, that bottom six, has really done a lot for them. Evander Kane, I don't know how relevant he's been, but he's been a solid contributor. And on top of other people, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, but again, this Edmonton team is really top heavy. The fact that I'm kind of scratching for guys to talk about really stands to the, I don't know what I'm waffling about, but anyways, I'm going to pull up their stats right now. McDavid 31 points, Draisaitl 28, Bouchard 27, Nugent Hopkins 20. Absurdly good. Zach Hyman 18 points, although it had the 14 goals again to McDavid. And then it's a steep drop off. Evander Kane, who I mentioned as a good contributor, only has 8 points. Matthias Ekholm has been a really good defenseman, only 7 points. And then in terms of their forwards, Adam Henrique, who I boasted about, he only has 4. Although Henrique, I heard, has been dealing with an injury. I'm going to pull up.
That's correct.
His page here, only 10 games played. He has a plus-minus of 0, so he's doing just fine. The 4 points in 10 games, serviceable for a guy you're putting in your bottom 6, especially at his old age. He's a guy I'd like to see on my team, the New Jersey Devils, not just for sentimental reasons, but because he's really good in the role that he's in now. They got some size down there with Connor Brown. Although their major question has been goaltending. The guy they've been rolling with for a long time has been Stuart Skinner, who only has an .897 save percentage. Calvin Pickard played sparingly in a few games. He played in 3 games, now a .915 save percentage. So if you're going to go by the rule of the hot hand, you end up going with him. But Stuart Skinner has been the guy for that team for the last couple of years, and I get why they aren't shying away from him. I mean, that they're in the Cup Finals, so I mean, a lot further than any of our teams are going to make it for a while. So I don't know what I'm waffling about.
Let me talk about Edmonton real quick. So, when I made my prediction back in November, the big question I had for them was depth in goaltending. What really haunted them in November and the early stage of the season? Defense and depth in goaltending. Jack Campbell essentially turned into a literal pylon and did absolutely nothing in net. And his 5x5 has now been demoted to the AHL. Have fun, Jack Campbell. He's been replaced by Stuart Skinner, who you mentioned, who has been the definition of inconsistent. If you want to think of inconsistency, Stuart Skinner, example number 1. Yes, he has that .897 save percentage, but he has come up with some of the biggest plays that this team needs in order to have any form of a chance. You talked about the high-end talent. McDavid, Draisaitl, Nugent Hopkins, Hyman, Evan Bouchard. But there's one player for me, and it drives me nuts because I talked about him a lot in the playoff preview video, where I hyped him up and he's done absolutely nothing. That's Darnell Nurse, who is driving me crazy. He has been nowhere. Cody Ceci, I think, might have more points than Darnell Nurse. Can you fact check that for me?
Yeah.
Does the literal pylon have more points?
Cody Ceci has 4 points. Darnell Nurse only has 3.
There you go. Cody Ceci, ladies and gentlemen, who has been known to do absolutely nothing, has more points than freaking Darnell Nurse. I don't know how that's possible. For those who want to remember the run, Edmonton went on to play not Vancouver. They played LA first. And they beat LA for the 3rd time in like 4 years. I don't remember the exact years, but they have done it again. Edmonton doing Edmonton things. Then they played Vancouver in what I think we could both say was the best series of the entire playoffs.
Oh,
that's the greatest series I've ever seen in my life. I cannot listen. I've watched hockey for a long time. You haven't watched
it yet. Sporadically, that's the word. There have been a lot of that was a great series. I mean, the series between obviously the 2 Canadian teams, they have a history. Canadian hockey teams and their fan bases hate each other. And that series, although Vancouver, Thatcher Demko being hurt, I think that really, if Thatcher Demko doesn't get hurt, I think it's the Vancouver Canucks in this situation, in the Stanley Cup Final who we're talking about. But Edmonton, they did their job. I've had so many questions about the Oilers. I've never really bought into them, and I still don't completely buy into them as a playoff performing team because they rely so heavily on high-end talent. They rely on McDavid and Draisaitl, and I think this series is going to be a problem for them. I'm looking at the advanced metrics right now. The Oilers have a sub 50% expected goal percentage at 5-on-5 in the playoffs, which is good for only the 10th best in the NHL. The LA Kings controlled the expected goal output in the series that they played just by looking at the stats, but Edmonton has delivered. They've made their chances count. And I'm just going to look at...
Before Cam looks for more stats, there's one other thing I want to bring up. What really helped Edmonton in the Vancouver series? And what really helped Edmonton against Dallas? Their ridiculously strong power play. That's been on fire. Not even this. You can't stop it. You can't. I don't know why it's so good. I don't know why I can't translate the 5-on-5. But their power play is half the reason they beat Vancouver to begin with. And to go along with this is their extremely well penalty kill, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Because there's another team that kills penalties extremely well. That's one of the main reasons that they're here. And then they beat Dallas, and I had Dallas winning it all, which GG's to my prediction to them. Apparently I rated Peter DeBoer too well again, and I bottled it. But we've talked about the Edmonton Oilers enough. We've already talked about it for 7 minutes. But there's another team that will enter into the ring in the Stanley Cup Finals. A returning squad. One that doesn't have the magic from last year, because we knew that they're going to be good. And oh boy, yeah. Cam, the Florida Panthers are legit. Talk about Florida for us.
Oh, man, I talked about the Oilers being top-heavy, the Panthers. Kind of the opposite, although they are not short on star power. Matthew Tkachuk, Alexander Barkov, Carter Verhaeghe, Sam Reinhart, who came out of nowhere to have a breakout season where he scored, how many goals? I gotta look at this guy's stats.
Too many.
He scored 57 goals this year. In the regular season, hasn't really been as good in the playoffs, but 8 goals, he has a goal-scoring touch. These guys just show up when it matters. And not only on the score sheet, they got some guys who can drive you nuts. I mean, Sam Bennett and Dmitry Kulikov, I was paying close attention to that Rangers-Panthers series because as a Devils fan, I was terrified that the Rangers were going to win. But, the depth has really showed up. Gustav Forsling came from a waiver claim to be one of the best defensemen in the league, arguably the best defenseman in these playoffs, outside of maybe Evan Bouchard, who we raved about earlier. But Gustav Forsling has been a force. Anton Lundell coming up as a depth guy with 12 points. There are 7 guys with 10 or more points on the Florida Panthers at the moment. Actually, no. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah.
8?
Yeah, I can count.
It's 7,
so,
right?
yeah, it's 7. And one thing about these guys that I've gathered is that they are nasty. I don't mean nasty as in, really skilled, because they're skilled. They'll throw stuff at you that you don't that gets called in the regular season. Now, the refs in the playoffs, especially as you get into the deeper rounds, deeper in a series, they kind of swallow their whistles a bit. You see some elbows, you see some interference, there's a little bit of late checks, cheap shots, sucker punches. Just stuff that you see old-time hockey. That's why I loved that series between the Panthers and Rangers, because it was a close series with 2 teams that got away with stuff that you shouldn't really get away with.
Yes.
Just 2 dirty teams. Matthew Tkachuk and Sam Bennett against Jacob Trouba and Matt Rempe, just a barn burner of a series. And Florida, one thing I can say about them outside of the stuff that I've said is they're fundamentally sound, they're disciplined, they have a relentless forecheck, they play really well in their own zone, they've outclassed every team they have played. The Tampa Bay Lightning, who, again, they're on their back 9 of their contending core, they're sort of sunsetting a little bit. But second round against the Boston Bruins, dominated. Third round against the New York Rangers, that would have been a sweep if it weren't for Igor Shesterkin. and now they're going up against the Edmonton Oilers. Like, I really like what Paul Maurice and the Florida Panthers have done since he's took over. I mean, sure, they won the President's Trophy the year before with Andrew Brunette as the interim guy, but what Paul Maurice has done is just reshape the way these guys play the game, and they're relentless. Any game that they play, they look like the better team. There's been no game that I've watched of them in these playoffs where I'm like, wow, they really got away with one there, or they don't really look that good. They're always the puck possession, the way they hold their own zone, the way they get the puck out of, or they hold the offensive zone, the way they get the puck out of the defensive zone, their breakouts, the way they just play the game is just fun. It's music to my ears. It's what everybody wants their favorite sports team to be in terms of fundamentals. And that is thanks in great part to Paul Maurice and that coaching staff.
This group is essentially the team of free agents. And you wonder after this season what they're going to look like for the future. This might be one of the weirder runs in terms of, like, look how many free agents they have. I'm just going to list a few of them. To start, on the forward core, you are listing Sam Reinhart, who has been great. Wow. And next year you have Sam Bennett and Carter Verhaeghe. That's next year. And they're going to have no cap space if we think how it's going to need to go. They have some other pieces as well, but the big one, of course, is going to be Reinhart. I don't know what you pay him, but do what you will with that. They have a couple other depth pieces.
Oh, man, and he's a UFA, too.
As well. Say it again?
Sam Reinhart's a UFA, too. He's going to get a bag, dude. 54 goals in your walk year, or 57, in your walk year. I can't. I mean, and Vladimir Tarasenko as well, who
Anton Lundell. Like, they have a lot of people, but
Kevin Stenlund.
Yes, the one thing I remember from this playoff preview again was what version of Sergei Bobrovsky are we going to get? Were we going to get the early stages of the contract Bobrovsky or the recent Bobrovsky, the one we saw with the Blue Jackets from years ago? I think we got option 2, and I don't think it's very close. Well, and he's made some magnificent saves. He dominated the Rangers. Florida did everything they needed to do. They went out. I love this team. They started us off by beating the Lightning, which, thank God. They then beat the Boston Bruins. Made me kind of sad. I thought Boston actually had a chance. Boy, was I wrong. And then they played the Rangers, who... Listen, I gave the Rangers a lot of crap in the playoffs this year. I had them losing to the Islanders. Don't ask me why. I thought Carolina was getting. Listen, I thought Carolina was getting dominated by Bo Horvat, and I was wrong. I was very wrong. Then the Rangers won, and I was very sad, and I wanted the Rangers to lose every game they played. And they kind of did down the stretch, because they went out and bottled it to the Panthers, which, sure, why not? They got lucky at the end of Game 6 against the Hurricanes, which led us to this series to begin with. And here we are, the Rangers losing, and they might be losing some key players. But back to Florida. I love them. And the players that I pointed out have performed. You talk about guys like Carter Verhaeghe, you talk about Tkachuk, like they're Bennett, Reinhart. I'm totally missing somebody. Barkov, there you go. And Bobrovsky in goal. This team is more well-rounded. And you mentioned it very well, that this team, what I'm going to look out for is they've been here before. Are they going to be able to adapt to Edmonton's style of play, which is trying to, at this point, just kill the high-end talent? That's all you have to do is just do a Matt Rempe and just try to run over people. That's essentially what they have to do. I'm just kidding. But at the end of the day,
that's a strategy.
There's a strategy. There you go. Tactics. I would be a terrible NHL coach. That's all I know. But I think it's time for one of my favorite parts of this. Your Stanley Cup final prediction. Cam, what do you got for us? Who do you have and how many games? What do we got?
I'm going to be honest, I don't think it's going to be particularly close. I have the Florida Panthers winning in 5 games because, for all the reasons I mentioned earlier, the Oilers, they're built on high-end talent, and the Florida Panthers have done a fantastic job at neutralizing that high-end talent. Again, the Eastern Conference Final adds Benaj, Adam Panarin kind of always do a Houdini act in the playoffs, but, I mean, Chris Kreider didn't really do that much, and he's typically a playoff performer. I mean, look at Boston. Their high-end guys didn't really do that much. Tampa, that's another team that's kind of built on their top guys, and they didn't really do much either. And I think that is due in great part to the Selke winner, Sasha Barkov, who has been one of my favorite players in the league for years. Like, I just love his game. I love how he's like Tim Duncan. Just, he doesn't really, nothing really jumps out at you, but he plays shutdown defense. And I'm very interested to see that matchup. I know the Barkov line is going to be out there against McDavid and Draisaitl. That's going to be the big matchup that's going to determine this series. But I think overall, Florida just has more top to bottom. The goaltending difference is major for me. And when you get deeper into these playoffs, the goaltending matters a lot more. In terms of goals saved above expected, Sergei Bobrovsky has 4.8, which is good for 5th in the playoffs. And Stuart Skinner hasn't done a bad job. He's 10th in goals saved above expected with 2.1. But like, I just don't really see the Oilers doing it. Sure, is there a path for them to win? Of course. They're in the Cup Final for a reason. They're a great team. They're a lot better than I can say about my New Jersey Devils. But I just think Florida, they're due. They've been here before. They play a style that's a lot of people. I don't like this talking point a lot. They play a style that's more fit for playoff hockey. And ultimately, I see Florida's depth. I see their defense. I see their goaltending just being too much for McDavid, Draisaitl, Bouchard, Nugent-Hopkins, and that power play to overcome. So that's my 2 cents on the Cup Final. I think Florida ends up winning in 5 or maybe 6.
So we actually thought on very similar wavelengths here, Cam. I have the Panthers in 6. I don't know how. I mean, with how disciplined Florida can be, I don't see Edmonton scoring a lot, and that's one of the main reasons why we're here. The Canada vibe. That's the one thing I'm most excited for. What the heck is that Canada crowd going to be like in Edmonton? Because they've been awesome. I love the Canadian crowds, other than the Maple Leafs. But it's just been a vibe. They're going to win, I think, multiple home games. But ending it in Game 6 would be so fitting to see, like, McDavid and Draisaitl lose. Because I believe Game 6 would be in Canada. So,
yeah, it would be in Edmonton.
That would be in Edmonton. It would be very fitting for them to lose in Edmonton after ruining the ending, probably ending the career of one player who I've loved for a very long time, Joe Pavelski. So, despite that, one thing that I've loved is narratives. I love narratives. And last year we had a former Florida Panther, a Florida Panther that was very good, a Florida Panther that left in the expansion draft, win a cup. That was Jonathan Marchessault. The following year, the former club he played for would possibly have a chance to win the Stanley Cup with a God Squad. They are winning this, led by Matthew Tkachuk. Matthew Tkachuk is going to, I think, dominate this mid-tier Edmonton defense. I'm excited to see how they play it, but I think this should be Florida. Listen, I like the argument for Edmonton to lose in 5. I like this series going to 7. It's going to be very unpredictable because I have no idea how Florida is going to play those road games in Canada. Like, how are they going to play with that type of environment? I have no idea.
They did just fine at the Garden, which is it's a pretty hostile environment come playoff time, dude.
The Rangers
I
didn't
mean,
need to do
yeah.
anything.
I mean,
So I get what you mean by that, but listen, I like the vibe. I'm gonna go with Florida in 6. And well, Cam, unfortunately for you, your time has ended here today. But before you go, would you like to shout out any of your channels? I'll give you your couple minutes of shout outs now.
You can listen to me ramble about sports for over an hour with my friend Ming Chen on the Cameron Woolley Show on YouTube. There are the full episodes on there. If you want to see more short form content, if that's more your speed, which seems to be more everyone's speed nowadays, you can follow me on TikTok. Just look up my name on there and you'll see me. I post clips on there, around like a clip or two a week. This week it's been slow because I've been on that Destiny 2 grind. Final shape
Yes.
after this. I'm going to be hopping on. Got the day one raid team ready. Going to be going in. Probably not going to clear it after sitting down for 10 hours getting booted because of the servers, but I'm gonna be. But that's where you can find me if you want to hear me talk about sports. If you want to follow me on Twitch, search Franken_RL. I do cast Rocket League games on there from time to time. And if you want to hear me cast collegiate games, just search up Iona Esports on Twitch. And if you want to look me up on YouTube for my gaming content, just search up Franken on YouTube.
Well, Cam, we will say goodbye. You can now leave the call. Make sure we'll have some of Cam's links in the description. But Cam,
Yes, sir.
thank you so much for being here. We will say goodbye to you. Thank you for so
thanks
much
for having
being
me
here.
on. Thanks for having me on. See you.
Of course. What a guy, yeah, chat? What a guy. Hit the subscribe button to my channel. Hit the subscribe button for Cam. But we're not done yet, chat, because long gone are the days of just one topic, and screw that. We're going to go into some other topics. Just for note, I said I wasn't going to talk about soccer today. There's some really weird results that we have to talk about, and I just can't wait about this anymore. To kick this theme off, we're only going to talk about Asia because this is where the weirdness happened. Just to make it even more confusing, we are talking about Asia today. We're just going to try to load it up, though, because this is taking actually a long time. But right now, chat, I will say this. Asian World Cup qualification is very, very confusing. And we're going to dive back into the second round. Because in this in the second round yesterday, well, on day one, I said a couple of interesting things. Like how, listen, I was backing some of the teams, and here we are. We're just going to run through some of the groups. Afghanistan has a chance. Despite their negative 10 goal difference, Afghanistan has a chance to make it to the dreaded third round. How? No idea. They drew Qatar, which is embarrassing in itself. Qatar, what the hell are we doing here? India drew Kuwait, which means Kuwait actually has a chance still. A team that I've backed from the start will have to go out there on the final day, which I believe is it's on Tuesday. Kuwait will be finishing off their run against Afghanistan, which, sure, why not? Make it even more weird. Qatar hopefully isn't going to sell again and actually try and go out and win a match. They face India. I have no idea how it's going to go. I still think it's going to be Kuwait. Group B is where it gets even weirder because North Korea beat Syria. This doesn't feel like it's real. Syria blowing it because they drew Myanmar a couple series ago. Might have blown it against North Korea. North Korea finishes off against Myanmar, and Syria plays Japan. Have fun. I do think North Korea actually has a legitimate chance. The only other groups we're going to talk about, Group C, Thailand, kind of sold with their recent match play. They went out and drew China. They drew 1-1, very boring match. Thailand now has to win against Singapore and have South Korea beat China by multiple goals. I do see that kind of happening. But that's something to watch out for. All these games, by the way, are on Tuesday, which will make this very fun. Group D, Oman actually went out and won a match. Malaysia and Kyrgyzstan will be the last two playing. Kyrgyzstan is still here because Malaysia, this is where it gets really frustrating. They drew each other. All right. Kyrgyzstan should have won, but Malaysia, they're not out of it yet. Oman finishes it up. I believe, yep, against Kyrgyzstan. Malaysia will have to win by like 3 goals to have any form of a chance. At least 3 goals. Group E, we already knew it was done. We'll have the Battle of Turkmenistan and Hong Kong next week. This group, Vietnam. What a big win from Vietnam. We said this was going to happen. I did call it. Vietnam did go out and beat the Philippines, and Iraq beat Indonesia. So here we are. Vietnam on the last day has a chance. Vietnam, however, does, I believe, finishes their run against Iraq, which will be very fun to see. I think the Iraqis might be playing the backups, but listen, that'll be something to watch out for. Group G tore my heart apart because Tajikistan fell to Jordan. Jordan is through. My boys, who went very far in the Asian Cup, are out of World Cup qualifying because they're a Pod 3 team and they lost to Jordan again. So listen, rip. Group H. Bahrain went out and drew Yemen yesterday, which put Bahrain through over Yemen. They'll join the UAE in the third round. By the way, the draw for this is in 3 weeks. So we'll talk about this again in 3 weeks when the draw happens. Group I, which will finish it off, Palestine drew Lebanon to advance to the next round. Well done to Palestine. I know they're in a lot of controversy right now with their country as a whole, with the war with Israel and everything else. But good job for them. I'm glad they made it there. They were the better team over Lebanon. That's what we talk about here. We talk about football. We don't talk about the wars or whatever. But Palestine's through. So here are your teams going through at least to the third round. We'll show you the teams so far. We know all but 5. We know 11 teams. Australia, Bahrain, Iran, Iraq, Japan, Jordan, Oman, Palestine, Qatar, the Saudi Arabia national team, South Korea, UAE, Uzbekistan. The draw is on June 27th. We'll talk about it then. That's the only World Cup qualifying we're talking about because we have other stuff to talk about. Because that World Cup qualifying as a whole was weird and needed to be talked about. Quickly, we're going to go over to the French Open, which is next on the agenda today. French Open, and we currently have our semi-finals today. So how did we get here? We're going to talk about, let's go through this screen. We'll talk about the round of 16. Where were we last time? We were in the quarterfinals last. No, we'll go. No, we talked about this last Friday, so we'll go all the way back here to Saturday. It's match day. We had a lot of rain, a lot of nonsense. We had Demonor advanced, Medvedev, Holger Rune, Zverev. Tommy Paul lost to Sarandola, which made me really sad because Tommy Paul wasn't such great form. I was backing him. Fritz was through, Casper Ruud, Novak. Sunday had Stefanos Tsitsipas, Alcaraz, Sinner, Dimitrov. There's a lot of rain, so that's why there were a lot of matches. Monday saw the upset of Medvedev, losing to Demonor. Novak beat Sarandolo. More on Novak in a minute. Casper Ruud beat Taylor Fritz. Zverev beat Holger Rune. Then this is where it got weird. Sinner beat Dimitrov. Alcaraz won. And you're going to notice this in the bottom corner, chat. Novak Djokovic withdrew with a major injury from the French Open and is out. It's now down to Casper Ruud, who went into the semifinals. He placed, actually today, actually be going up. His match will be live during when this video goes live. Sinner has split the first 2 sets with Alcaraz. Sinner dominated the opening set, but Alcaraz was playing the second set during the middle of this recording. But yeah, the French Open on the men's side has been nuts. The women's side has been just as crazy. We know who's in the final on the women's side. Back to Saturday. Gracheva, Zhang lost, which is kind of odd. Rybakina played well. Andreeva, we'll talk about Andreeva in a minute. Paulini, Madison Keys falling to Navarro. I know a lot of people like Madison Keys, but she lost in 2 tiebreakers to Navarro. Svitolina was through. Sunday we had Swiatek, Vondrousova, Coco Gauff, and Ons Jabeur. Monday we had Paolini again. Rybakina over Svitolina, which is a very level match on paper, but Rybakina was just better. Sabalenka was through. Andreeva was through again. Tuesday saw the continued dominance of Goff after dropping a set. She beat Jabeur. Swiatek over Vondrousova. Wednesday saw Rybakina lose to Paolini, and Andreeva beat Sabalenka, which led us to these semifinals yesterday, which saw the dominance again of Iga Swiatek and Paolini, which set us up with this final of Iga of Swiatek and Jasmine Paolini. What a weird final. I was not expecting this. I don't think really anyone did, because Paolini had a very tough road to get here for the most part. But Swiatek, we know what Swiatek brings to the table. Swiatek being the better player, Swiatek doing all this, winning multiple majors. This is why I have Swiatek winning. I think Swiatek should take care of this fairly easily. I think it'll be kind of similar to the Goff match. I have it as two double 6-4, 6-4 to Swiatek. I think Iga should win this major. Another major title going to the way of the Polish star in Iga Swiatek. That's my prediction for that. Paolini, great run, but I think she loses to Swiatek. If I had to predict the final, whoever wins Alcaraz Sinner is going to win the whole thing. I think Casper Ruud falls to Zverev. I think it's going to be Yannick Sinner against Zverev, but I honestly have no idea because Sinner is down on his serve. Whoever wins Sinner Alcaraz, both of them would be an incredible matchup to face Zverev. I think Alcaraz or Sinner would win. So whoever wins that semifinal, where my mouse is, where the cursor currently is, I think that's what or the arrow is, but we'll just call it that, beats Ruud or Zverev. I want Casper Ruud to make it, not because he has like he technically walked over, but how many chances he's had and how good of a player he is. He deserves to be in a final of a major tournament. We just don't know when that major is going to be. But I have Sinner or Alcaraz, whoever wins in that semifinal, beating whoever wins Ruud and Zverev. I do think it's going to be Zverev, but we will come out and see. NBA Finals. Let's go to that next. The NBA Finals. I had Game 1 last night, and it was not close. I'm just going to say it to you right now. I kind of regret my pick immediately. I think I said the Dallas Mavericks, but I honestly I don't even remember. Game 1 was something. It was a semi-blowout. We had the return of Kristaps Porzingis. We had this, we had that, and now this just gives the vibe of Boston running away with it. Already. I know it's early. I know it's early in the series. I know it's a little premature. But you have to admit it. That Boston team looks too good. They look too good. And just the vibe they have and how talented of a squad they are leads me to this mindset. You don't go out in game 1. Let's look at the box score. Can I find a box score? I don't even know what the box scores are. God damn it. Box score. There we go. Yes, we just got demonetized. GG's in the chat. But back to the box score. Kyrie Irving, nowhere to be seen. Luka was the only one who was playing basketball, it felt like, last night. But for Boston, it was a good team effort. You only had guys score about 15 to 20 points, but it was still good enough. You had the return of Kristaps Porzingis last night, who shot 8 of 13 in his return. He had 20 points. Jrue Holiday played well. Derek White played well. Al Horford, Tatum, and Brown. They have so many good players. That talent they have is ridiculous. And when you go up against Dallas, the high-end talent from Dallas had to carry them, and they couldn't do it. P.J. Washington, only 14 points. Derrick Jones was irrelevant. He only had 5. Daniel Gafford did not have a good game. Only 3 for 3. He only had 3 shot attempts, which is not great. Jaden Hardy had a solid game with 13 points, but just was not enough, and I'm very worried now for Dallas. As it says here, Celtics cruising game 1. I think that might start to become a trend, and I don't think people want to see that become a trend, but I think it's very possible that it does. If I had to make a prediction for game 2, I'm going to say Boston wins again. I think Boston should win, both home games and see it. We'll probably be talking about this topic again. It's very possible when we talk about this topic again on Friday, because the next video is the Euros and Copa America. It's very possible that this series is 3-0 entering Friday night. I don't think it does, but it's very possible. And that's the worry that I have. But right now, I think it's going to be 2-1 entering that, and that's why my prediction. I think the home team goes out and wins the first three. Then I see the narrative changing. I think Boston wins this. It's going to now win it in 5 if I had to make a new prediction. They just looked too good in game 1. They looked way too good, and I really do see Boston coming out on Sunday night and just absolutely wiping the floor with Dallas again. But I think Dallas has a chance, but the hope for them is sliding. To conclude today's madness, I know I'm going through some of these topics a little bit quicker, but that's just the way it do be like that sometimes, and that screen's not loaded yet. So we'll talk about keeping on this screen for a little more, and we actually, for real this time, I'm wearing the Ferrari shirt. You know Formula One is back this week. We are talking F1, and we're going to start with some news actually today, chat. With the re-signing of Sergio Perez by Red Bull. Wait. Didn't we say he was bad? Like, isn't he, like, irrelevant during Europe? I don't know. I got nothing to say on that one. Sergio Perez signed a new 2-year deal with Red Bull. Because why not, honestly, at this point, I don't know. At this point, sure. Why not? You know, it's just going to be madness, I guess. I think that's just what we're asking for, because why the heck would they re-sign him? Like, isn't this where we're supposed to see the new age of young stars? There's a lot of young talent possibly coming in next year, featuring guys like Ollie Behrman, Antonelli, just to mention a couple of names. The return of Liam Lawson. You have other good young drivers who will be coming in for this older group. Why keep Perez around when he's done absolutely nothing? Are we trying to not like? Are we trying to keep Max as the? I mean, I know we're trying to keep Max at the number 1, but don't you need to have a future for some of the younger drivers? Because they can go out and make names for themselves in IndyCar. They can do it in World Endurance. They can do it in not MotoGP. I'm forgetting the other the other format. I'm forgetting it. Formula E is another one. But like, it's a little bit frustrating. But my frustrations end here. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Canada. Oh, Canada. I'm not saying the Canadian anthem today. Here we are. This is the screen we're going to have the whole time because we don't have any times or anything seen yet. Welcome to Canada. It's, Canada, I like the track, but I just don't know about how this race is going to go. Because the last couple of races have been incredible. They were amazing. But we know what happened last year. Max won again. It was like that dominant run from last year. Let's take a look at. I'm gonna pull up the race results from last year. How we got here. It was topped by Max, Fernando, and Lewis. Leclerc, Sainz, Perez, Alex Albon. So the Williams was good here last year. Valtteri Bottas got points as well. What trends do I like for this race? I like the continued success of Charles Leclerc. I think he gets on the podium. I think Max wins, and then it will go to Leclerc. And then the rest is really up for grabs. I like the Mercedes. I think Mercedes could be on pace to get a good result. Sergio Perez, I think, is beyond pace to get a good result. But McLaren haven't gotten a good result here, I don't believe, in a long time. So that's another thing I'll watch out for is the McLarens, because last year when we had this race, they went out and finished in 11th. And where was the other one? 11th and 13th, with Piastri 11th and Lando 13th. But that's when the car was like starting to come out into its own. This year, that car is really good. So that's the one thing I'm going to watch out for. But my projected top 5, we'll go top 5 this week. Max wins. I'm going to say Max wins, gets back on top of the podium. We'll hear the Dutch national anthem on Sunday. I'm going to say Max wins, followed by, we'll go with Charles Leclerc. And we're going to be followed by Carlos. I think Carlos will go third. We'll go with George Russell, because George Russell has not been in the best form ever. And he's going to, I think, might get revenge for his DNF last year. He went 53 laps and then DNF'd. I think he might get his revenge. Then I'm going to go with Sergio Perez as P5. I do see the McLarens in the points, but just not on the top half, just because of their form in Canada in the last couple of years. But don't be surprised if McLaren comes out like a 3-4 or 4-5. I would not be surprised by that at all. But ladies and gentlemen, that is this weekend's episode of the Robbie Basel Show. I know this was supposed to come out on Friday. It's actually going on Saturday. So you will be able to watch. I made that mistake during tennis. This video is actually going out on Saturday. So enjoy your weekend. I hope everyone enjoys it. Once again, shout out to Cameron Woolley. We'll have some of his links in the description of this video, so you can check him out. Check out my boy. He's an incredible Rocket League broadcaster. He's been one of the top dogs for the MAC in the last couple of years. Was able to do the MAC tournament as a freshman, and he's also one of like the better esports players at Iona. So it's just kind of cool. But that is all the time I have. For now, I'm Robbie Basel saying so long. Next video is Euros and Copa America preview. I'm so excited for that. You guys are going to really enjoy that video. But that's the end of episode 101. I'm Robbie Basel saying so long. Enjoy your weekend. See you guys for some good old football on Tuesday. Goodbye, everyone.